I learned my billionaire wife had cut our 10-year-old son out of her will from the estate lawyer she forgot was also my family's lawyer. The replacement beneficiary was not a charity. Not her sister. Not some foundation carrying her name. It was the 11-year-old daughter of her male secretary. 48 hours later, I revoked the voting proxy that had allowed my wife to control $1.2 billion of my family's assets. By the end of the week, 3 banks were asking whether her company still qualified for the credit facilities built around that capital. I did not take a dollar that belonged to her. I simply stopped letting her act like mine already did. My name is Nathan Vale. My wife, Celeste Vale, was the founder and CEO of Meridian Crest Group, a Charlotte-based investment and industrial holding company valued at just under $4 billion. Business magazines loved Celeste. At 42, she had the kind of biography editors could turn into mythology. Scholarship student. Wharton MBA. First fund launched from a borrowed office. First 100 million before 35. Billionaire before 40. Cold in negotiations. Perfect in photographs. She had been called the steel magnolia of private capital so many times that even our son, Owen, knew the nickname. What the profiles usually mentioned in one sentence was that Meridian Crest's earliest expansion capital came from the Vale family. My family. The Vale fortune was older than either of us. My grandfather made money in rail logistics and timber. My father moved much of it into industrial property, regional infrastructure, and private lending. By the time I inherited management responsibility, the family wealth was spread through Vale Heritage Trust and a family holding company called North Star Vale Partners. I did not personally have $1.2 billion sitting in a checking account. That is not how fortunes like ours work. The money was in companies, warehouses, land, private credit funds, marketable securities, minority stakes, and, most importantly, a 27% economic interest in Meridian Crest itself. Celeste had built the company. But my family's capital helped her build it faster. I never held that over her. That was probably my first mistake. When we married 12 years earlier, I gave her a limited voting proxy over Northstar's Meridian Crest shares so she would not have to negotiate with her husband every time she needed shareholder approval for routine corporate matters. The proxy was broad. Not permanent. Not ownership. It could be revoked by Northstar under specified conditions. At the time, our family attorney warned me. Marriage is not a governance structure. I laughed. Celeste laughed harder. We're not going to become one of those couples, she said. We became worse. Our son Owen was born 2 years later. For a long time, Celeste adored him. I mean that literally. She carried him into board meetings when he was a baby because she refused to cancel a financing call and refused to leave him with a sitter while he had a fever. She taught him chess. He slept on the couch in her office during school holidays. Every birthday, no matter what country she was in, she came home. Then, about 18 months before I found the will, something changed. The change had a name. Miles Corbin. Celeste hired Miles as executive secretary after her previous chief of staff retired. He was 35, polished, efficient, and so good at anticipating Celeste's schedule that within 6 months he was managing far more than calendars. Investor calls, board packets, travel, executive hiring, private dinner arrangements, family office coordination. He was always there. Miles also had an 11-year-old daughter named Sophie. Her mother had left when Sophie was 3. At first, I felt sorry for them. Owen and Sophie were close in age, so Celeste started inviting Sophie to family events when Miles had childcare problems. Sunday brunch. A Hornets game. A lake weekend. Then the invitations stopped being occasional. Celeste paid Sophie's tuition at a private school. When I asked why, she said Meridian had an executive education allowance and Miles qualified. I checked. There was no such allowance. Celeste had paid personally. That's generous, I said. Sophie shouldn't lose opportunities because her father works 70-hour weeks for me. What about the other executives' children? Miles is different. That sentence stayed with me. Not because generosity was wrong. Because Celeste had begun constructing a private category in which ordinary rules no longer applied to him. Owen noticed before I did. One evening, after Celeste missed his school robotics final to attend Sophie's piano recital, he asked me, "Does Mom like Sophie more?" I almost answered too quickly. Of course not. But she went to her thing. She had work nearby. That was the explanation Celeste gave me. Later, I learned the recital was 27 minutes in the opposite direction from Meridian headquarters. I did not tell Owen. Children should not have to investigate their mothers. 3 months later came his birthday. Celeste promised she would be home by 7. At 8:40, Owen was still sitting beside an untouched cake. At 9:15, she finally arrived. Miles was with her. So was Sophie. Celeste carried a large gift bag. For 1 second, I thought at least she remembered. Then she handed it to Sophie. "Your tablet was in my car." Owen looked at the bag. Then at his mother. "My present?" Celeste froze. She had forgotten it in the office. She tried to laugh it off. Owen did not cry until later. That night, I confronted her. "You forgot our son's birthday gift because you were carrying Sophie's tablet." "I forgot a bag, Nathan. I didn't forget my child." "You missed half the dinner. I was closing a $300 million acquisition. Miles left the office with you. He works for me. And Sophie? He couldn't get childcare." At 9 at night? Celeste's expression hardened. "Do you want me to punish a single father for doing his job?" That was how every conversation started going. If I questioned Miles, I was cruel. If I questioned Sophie's presence, I was jealous of a child. If Owen was hurt, Celeste said I was teaching him entitlement. Then the will changed. I found out because of a tax planning meeting. My father died 4 years earlier, and every September I met with Theodore Grant, the attorney who had handled Vale family estate matters for almost 30 years. Theo was 71, careful, slow, and incapable of pretending not to notice a legal problem. We were reviewing Northstar distributions when he closed the folder. "Nathan, there's something I need to clarify before we update your estate plan." "What?" Celeste revised hers. "That's normal. She did not use me." "Also normal." Celeste had her own counsel. Theo looked uncomfortable. "Her new attorney sent us a coordination request because your plans reference reciprocal guardianship and certain marital property assumptions." I put down my pen. "What assumptions changed?" "Owen is no longer a residuary beneficiary of her separate estate." For several seconds, I genuinely thought I had misunderstood. "What?" Theo slid a copy of the coordination summary toward me. "Not the full will. Only the provisions necessary for our planning." Celeste's personal estate was estimated between $600 and $750 million, depending on Meridian Crest's share price. Under her previous will, after taxes, specific charitable gifts, and certain family provisions, most of her estate went into a trust for Owen. Now, Owen received one fixed trust. $10 million. That sounds enormous to normal people. It was enormous. That was not the point. The remaining estate, potentially hundreds of millions, went into something called the Corbin Family Opportunity Trust. Primary beneficiary: Sophie Corbin. I read the name twice. Then a third time. "Is this real?" Theo did not insult me with reassurance. "Yes." Did Celeste explain why? Her counsel's cover letter says she considers Owen already substantially provided for through the Vale family estate, and wishes to direct her independent wealth toward a child without comparable inherited resources. I felt something inside me go still. She used my family's money as the reason to disinherit our son from hers. That is one way to describe it. Is the will valid? Assuming execution requirements were met, she is generally free to leave her separate property as she chooses. I looked up sharply. "I'm not asking whether I can challenge it." "Good. I'm asking whether it's valid." "Likely. Then I'm not touching her will." Theo nodded. That mattered. Celeste's fortune was hers. She could leave it to Sophie. To Miles. To a university. To a stranger she met in an airport. I could hate the decision without pretending I owned the right to rewrite it. Then I asked the question that mattered. What exactly does Owen inherit from Northstar under our current plan? Theo's expression changed. Potentially very substantially. How much of that plan assumes Celeste retains management authority if I die first? A great deal. There it was. Years earlier, I had named Celeste as successor manager of Northstar's family holding interests if I died while Owen was still a minor. Not owner. Manager. She would oversee investments on Owen's behalf until he reached 30. The theory was obvious. She was his mother. My wife. A world-class investor. Who better? Now I looked at the Corbin Trust summary again. Remove her. Theo did not move. From what? Every fiduciary role in my estate plan. Nathan. Trustee. Investment advisor. Protector appointments she can control. Successor manager of Northstar. Everything involving Vale assets after my death. That is a major revision. Yes. Do you want time? No. You discovered this 10 minutes ago. I discovered she does not consider our son her natural successor. That is not quite what the document says. Fine. She considers another child a more appropriate recipient of most of her fortune because Owen has mine. Theo remained silent. I continued. If that is her philosophy, she cannot simultaneously control the fortune she is using to justify cutting him out. That was the first decision. The second came when Theo asked about the voting proxy. Celeste still controlled Northstar's voting rights over Meridian Crest shares. The proxy could be revoked without cause on 15 business days' notice. But immediate revocation was permitted if the proxy holder experienced a material conflict with Northstar beneficiaries. Does this qualify? I asked. Possibly. Possibly isn't enough. No. So we don't claim it does. Theo nodded. I had learned from my father never to stretch a contract because I wanted an outcome. What can Northstar do without alleging breach? Non-renew at year-end. That's 4 months. Yes. Anything else? Northstar can call a special governance meeting and vote to replace the proxy under the standard family company provision, but you do not control that decision alone. Northstar's governance committee consisted of 5 people. Me. My Aunt Caroline. My cousin Andrew. 2 independent fiduciaries. For major related party matters, I had to abstain. Again, good structure. Call the meeting. Theo studied me. On what basis? Changed beneficiary alignment and potential conflict in our succession planning. That's defensible. Then use that. I left his office at 4:10. Celeste called at 4:23. I wondered if her estate attorney had warned her. No. She wanted me to attend dinner with Miles and Sophie. Owen has soccer. Can't the sitter take him? I stopped walking. No. It's one dinner. It's his semi-final. Nathan, this dinner matters. Miles has been under enormous pressure. So has your son. Silence. Then the familiar irritation. Don't start. Too late. When were you planning to tell me you changed your will? Nothing. Not even breathing. Then. Who told you? Theodore received coordination documents. That was confidential. It affects my estate plan. You had no right to see the details. I saw the provisions that affect mine. Her voice went cold. This is exactly why I used separate counsel. Why did you cut Owen out? I did not cut him out. You left him 10 million and gave the rest to Sophie. Owen will inherit hundreds of millions from you. That is not an answer. It is the answer. I stopped beside my car. Say it plainly. Celeste exhaled. Owen is protected. And Sophie isn't. Yes. So your solution is to make your secretary's daughter your principal heir. Miles has nothing like what we have. I asked about Sophie. She matters to me. How much? Silence. That silence told me more than shouting would have. I asked. Does Miles know? Yes. Does Sophie? No. Does Owen? No. Good. At least our son had not learned this from someone else yet. Celeste's voice hardened again. Nathan, I will not let you turn this into some ugly competition between children. I'm not. You sound like you are. I have no problem with Sophie receiving money from you. Then what is your problem? You used Owen's future inheritance from my family as the reason you didn't need to leave him yours. That is practical estate planning. No. Practical estate planning does not make another man's child your primary heir without discussing what that means for our family. My money is mine. Yes. She went silent. I think she expected an argument. Instead I said. And mine is mine too. Her breathing changed. What does that mean? You'll find out through counsel. Nathan. I ended the call. Not because I wanted drama. Because I had already made the mistake of discussing too many structural decisions as though marriage replaced paperwork. That evening, Northstar's independent fiduciaries received notice of a special governance meeting. 2 days later, they reviewed the revised estate alignment, Celeste's role in my succession plan, and the fact that she had redirected most of her separate estate away from our son based partly on his expected Vale inheritance. Nobody called her immoral. Nobody needed to. The question was narrower. Should someone whose personal estate plan treated Vale wealth as a substitute for her own inheritance retain control over Vale voting rights and future management authority for the beneficiary of that wealth? The answer was 4-0. I abstained. North Star revoked Celeste's voting proxy effective immediately under a consensual governance amendment authorized by the full committee. Then we removed her from every successor fiduciary position in my estate documents. Nothing she owned changed hands. Not one Meridian share personally owned by Celeste. Not one house. Not one account. Not $1. We simply took back authority that belonged to my family. At 11:06 the next morning, Meridian Crest's general counsel received formal notice. At 11:19, the corporate secretary updated the shareholder voting register. At 11:42, two banks requested confirmation because North Star's proxy had been part of Meridian's governance disclosures for years. At 12:05, Celeste called me. I answered. You revoked the proxy. Yes. Do you understand what you just did? Yes. You control 27% of Meridian voting power again. North Star does. You're North Star. No. That assumption is exactly the problem. She went quiet. Then. You're punishing me over a will. No. You said my money was mine. It is. So why touch Meridian? Because the voting rights were never yours. Her voice sharpened. You gave them to me. I delegated them. For 12 years. Yes. And now because I made one estate decision you don't like. No. I cut her off. Because you used the existence of my family fortune to justify treating our son as already provided for, while you continued controlling the same family fortune through a proxy and expected to manage it if I died. Silence. For the first time, Celeste had nothing immediate to say. I continued. You cannot use the Vale fortune as the reason Owen doesn't need yours and then act shocked when the Vale family decides you should no longer control ours. Her voice dropped. Does Owen know? No. Don't tell him. I won't. Relief. Then fear. What happens to Meridian? Nothing automatically. You know the lenders will ask questions. They already are. Nathan. What? We close the Halcyon acquisition next month. I knew. A $2.1 billion industrial acquisition. Part of the financing package assumed stable support from Meridian's largest long-term shareholder. North Star. My family. Celeste suddenly understood what I had understood in Theo's office. Her will could leave her fortune anywhere she wanted. But she had spent 12 years building Meridian on the assumption that the Vale fortune would always stand behind her decisions because her husband did. That assumption had just expired. I need you to keep supporting the deal, she said. Send it to North Star. I'm asking you. And I'm telling you the family committee will review it. You never made me do that before. I know. Why now? I looked at the photograph on my desk. Owen at 9, missing 2 front teeth, holding a soccer trophy with both hands. Because you reminded me that our family's fortunes are separate. Celeste went quiet. Then she whispered. Miles said you'd react like this. That sentence changed everything. Like what? Territorial. I felt my hand tighten around the phone. You discussed my family fortune with your secretary before discussing your will with your husband? He helped me think through the optics. The optics of disinheriting our son? I did not disinherit him. That is not what I asked. Silence. Then. Yes. I stared at Owen's photograph. The will had been Celeste's choice. But now I knew Miles had been inside the decision before I was. And if he had been advising her about why Owen did not need Celeste's fortune because he would inherit mine, I wanted to know exactly what Miles believed the Vale fortune would do after I was gone. Because the will was no longer the only document I needed to read. Miles Corbin had been inside Celeste's estate planning for at least 5 months. That was the first thing Theodore Grant discovered. Not because Miles was named in the will. He wasn't. Not directly. Sophie was the beneficiary. Miles had no legal right to the Corbin Family Opportunity Trust except whatever authority Celeste's new estate documents eventually gave him as Sophie's parent. The problem was the drafts. Theo called me at 7:20 the next morning. I need you in my office. Is Owen okay? Yes. Then what happened? We received additional coordination documents. From Celeste's lawyer? Yes. What kind? Trustee provisions. I was there in 35 minutes. Theo had already marked the pages. Celeste's revised estate plan created the Corbin Family Opportunity Trust if she died while Sophie was still a minor. The trust would hold the bulk of Celeste's residuary estate. An independent trust company was named primary trustee. Good. Miles was not. That relieved me for about 12 seconds. Then Theo pointed to the advisor clause. Miles would serve as family distribution advisor while Sophie remained under 25. He could not take money personally. He could not rewrite beneficiaries. He could not direct investments. But the trustee was required to consult meaningfully with him on education, housing, travel, medical care, enrichment, and other discretionary distributions for Sophie. In practice, that gave him influence over hundreds of millions of dollars intended for his daughter. Is that unusual? I asked. No. So why am I here? Theo turned the page. The next section addressed the possibility that Sophie attended school, traveled, or lived with Owen after Celeste's death. That alone was odd. Then I read the language. It is Settler's expectation that the Vale family structure will continue to provide substantial intergenerational resources for Owen Vale. Accordingly, trust administration for Sophie should not be reduced merely to equalize benefits between the children. I looked up. She wrote the Vale fortune into her trust philosophy. Not as an asset, Theo said. As an assumption. That Owen would have enough from us. Yes. And Sophie therefore deserves more from her. That appears to be the rationale. I kept reading. Then I found something worse. A planning memorandum from Celeste's estate council summarized a meeting attended by Celeste and Miles. Not me. Not Owen's guardian. Not anyone from North Star. One bullet point read. Ms. Vale expressed concern that future Vale family fiduciaries may favor Owen in ways that create substantial lifestyle inequality between Owen and Sophie. Mr. Corbin suggested coordinating educational and family opportunities where possible to avoid two-tier childhoods. I stared at the page. Sophie isn't part of the Vale family. Theo said nothing. She's Miles's daughter. Yes. Why is he discussing how my family spends money on Owen? He may have been speaking generally. Then why is it in an estate memo? Theo leaned back. Because Celeste's counsel thought it relevant enough to record. That was not the worst bullet. The next one was. Mr. Corbin asked whether Ms. Vale, in her expected role overseeing Vale family assets for Owen if Mr. Vale predeceases her, could use distributions to support shared experiences involving both children. Counsel advised that authority would depend entirely on Mr. Vale's governing instruments. I read it again. Miles had asked whether Celeste could use my son's inheritance from my family to pay for Sophie too. Not directly steal it. Not transfer ownership. But use discretionary distributions from Owen's trusts for shared experiences that benefited both children. Vacations. Housing. Education environments. Maybe anything framed as serving Owen while Sophie participated. And Celeste had apparently entertained the question enough for her lawyer to ask about it. Theo said quietly. This is why removing her from successor fiduciary roles was prudent. Did she ever ask you this? No. Did Miles? No. Then they were planning around trust authority they had never reviewed. Correct. I felt anger rising. Theo raised one hand. Nathan. I know. Say it. Miles asking a stupid question does not mean Celeste planned to misuse trust assets. Good. Do we have evidence she intended to? No. Then we don't say she did. Theo nodded. I was getting tired of how often fairness required me to stop exactly where the evidence stopped. But that was the difference between protecting Owen and weaponizing him. Send the memo to North Star's independent fiduciaries, I said. They already have it. What did they say? That the proxy revocation now looks even more justified. Anything else? They want a full review of every authority Celeste currently holds over Vale family structures. That was broader. What authority remains? Very little after yesterday. Very little isn't none. Theo opened another chart. Celeste remained an authorized emergency signatory on 2 family charitable accounts. A backup representative for 1 real estate holding company. And a non-voting observer on North Star's Family Investment Council. Old arrangements. Mostly ceremonial. None were necessary. Remove her where the governing documents allow it. Committee review? Yes. Do you want to speak to Celeste first? No. Theo gave me a look. Because? Because this is governance, not marriage. That sentence sounded cold. It was also overdue. At 9:10, Meridian Crest's general counsel called Northstar. At 9:16, Celeste called me. I did not answer. At 9:22, Miles called. That one I found interesting. I let it ring too. At 9:30, an email arrived from him. Nathan, I think there has been a serious misunderstanding around Celeste's estate planning. I'd appreciate the chance to explain before this affects Meridian further. Sophie never asked for any of this, and I never intended to interfere with Owen's inheritance. I forwarded it to Theo. His reply came immediately. Do not engage directly. I wasn't planning to. Then Celeste texted. Miles says Theo is circulating private estate notes to Northstar. Tell him to stop. I answered. Documents affecting Vale Family Fiduciary Authority are being reviewed by Vale fiduciaries. Her response. That memo was privileged. I sent it to Theo. He called 5 minutes later. Her lawyer voluntarily sent the coordination memorandum because it referenced your estate structures. It was marked confidential, not privileged as to you. So we can use it? For internal fiduciary review, yes. Good. Do not wave it around. I won't. The problem was not publicity. The problem was trust. By noon, Northstar's governance committee had completed the first stage of its review. Celeste was removed as emergency signatory from the charitable accounts. Her investment council observer role ended. The real estate backup authority moved to an independent fiduciary. None of that changed her wealth. None of it changed Meridian ownership. But the family structure that had once treated Celeste as almost indistinguishable from me was becoming formal again. She hated it. At 12:40, she appeared at Theo's office without an appointment. I happened to still be there. Theo's assistant came in. Celeste Vale is outside. Theo looked at me. You want to leave? No. You want her in here? She has a right to ask about documents involving her. He nodded. 5 minutes. Celeste entered wearing a cream suit, no coat, and the expression she usually reserved for hostile boards. Miles was not with her. Good. She looked at Theo first. You sent private estate material to Nathan's family. Theo remained calm. I sent material that specifically discussed authority over Vale assets to the fiduciaries responsible for those assets. You could have called me. I did not represent you in preparing those documents. You represented us for years. I represent Nathan and certain Vale entities. Your new estate council represents you. Celeste looked at me. You knew this would happen. No. You removed me from everything within 48 hours. Because the documents showed our assumptions were no longer aligned. Our assumptions? You want your fortune structured around Sophie because Owen has mine. He does. And you expected to keep managing mine if I died. Her face tightened. For Owen. Then why was Miles asking whether you could use Owen's distributions for things involving Sophie? He wasn't asking to take Owen's money. That's not what I said. He was asking about shared family experiences. What family? Celeste went silent. I continued. Sophie is Miles's daughter. I know. Owen is ours. I know. Then why are you planning an estate structure where my family's wealth is treated as one side of a balancing equation between them? Her eyes flashed. Because Sophie has no one. She has a father. You know what I mean. No. I don't. Celeste stepped closer. Owen has you. Northstar. The Vale Trusts. Property. Family offices. A network Sophie will never have. So I wanted to give her security. I never objected to that. You are objecting now. No. I'm objecting to you deciding Owen needs less from his own mother because his father has money. Celeste looked away. That was the sentence she could not answer cleanly. Then I asked. Did Miles suggest cutting Owen's share? No. Did he suggest Sophie as primary residuary beneficiary? She hesitated. Yes. There it was. What exactly did he say? That leaving Owen most of my estate would just stack more money onto money. And Sophie? He said I could change the entire trajectory of her life. That sounds persuasive. It was. Did he tell you what happens to Sophie's life if you and he stop speaking? Celeste frowned. What? Your will survives your relationships. I know. Does Sophie remain beneficiary if you fire Miles? Yes. If he marries someone else? Yes. If you and I divorce? Yes. If Sophie decides she hates you at 18? Celeste's jaw tightened. Yes. So you understand this is not about helping Miles. It isn't. Then why was he in the planning meetings? Because Sophie is his daughter. And Owen is my son. Where was I? Silence. That was the question. Not whether Celeste had a legal right. She did. Not whether Sophie deserved generosity. Maybe she did. The question was why my wife could redesign our son's place in her legacy with her secretary sitting beside her while I remained unaware. Celeste's anger began to collapse. I knew you'd react badly. Then you avoided telling me. Yes. That has become a habit. She looked at me. What does that mean? It means every time you know I may say no, you build the structure first. That is not fair. Isn't it? Her expression hardened again. This is my estate. Yes. My decision. Yes. Then you don't get a veto. I never asked for one. She stopped. I continued. You're confusing disagreement with control. That landed harder than I expected. She looked almost offended by the possibility. Then Theo's phone rang. He glanced at the screen. Northstar's bank counsel. Celeste's face changed. What happened? Theo answered on speaker after getting my nod. A lawyer from Union Carolina Bank spoke. Mr. Grant, we need clarification regarding Northstar's governance posture toward Meridian Crest. Theo said. What specifically? The Halcyon acquisition facilities. Celeste stepped closer. What about them? The lawyer recognized her voice. Ms. Vale. Yes. There is a shareholder support representation in the financing package referencing continuity of Northstar voting alignment. I looked at Theo. He frowned. What representation? The lawyer read it. Meridian expects Northstar Vale Partners, as a long-standing strategic shareholder, to remain supportive of management's acquisition strategy through closing, subject to customary fiduciary considerations. Theo's expression went still. Who signed that representation? Meridian. Did Northstar? No. Celeste interrupted. It's a disclosure statement, not a guarantee. The bank lawyer agreed. Correct. But the proxy revocation changes our governance assumptions. We are requesting updated confirmation. Theo asked. Does the financing require Northstar support? Not contractually. Then what exactly do you need? Comfort that a 27% shareholder does not intend to oppose the transaction. Celeste looked at me. There it was. The real pressure. Not legal obligation. Expectational leverage. For years, Meridian's lenders assumed Northstar would not create problems because Celeste controlled the votes. Now she didn't. Theo answered. Northstar has not taken a position on Halcyon. Celeste's eyes widened. The bank lawyer continued. We would appreciate one before final syndication. Submit the materials to the committee. We will. The call ended. Celeste turned to me. You cannot oppose Halcyon over this. I haven't. You know what uncertainty does to financing. Yes. We've spent 9 months on this acquisition. Then the numbers should survive independent review. You already reviewed it through Meridian. No. You reviewed it. I am Meridian's CEO. And Northstar is a shareholder. Her face tightened. For 12 years, those two facts had effectively been merged through our marriage. Now they were separate. She hated every second of it. You're creating a governance crisis. No. What do you call banks questioning support the week after you revoke my proxy? A consequence of relying on authority you didn't own. Celeste stared at me. Then whispered. Miles said you would use Owen to take Meridian back. That sentence was so absurd I almost missed the important part. Take Meridian back? She realized what she had said. What does that mean? Nothing. No. Miles used those words. He said you might try to use Northstar's shares to regain influence. Regain? Silence. I stepped closer. I never lost my family's economic interest. No. I delegated voting authority to you. Yes. So what exactly did Miles think belonged to you? He was talking loosely. Did he advise you that Northstar would remain supportive after you changed the will? Celeste did not answer. Did he? Yes. How? He said you would be angry, but you wouldn't jeopardize Meridian because too much Vale wealth is tied to it. There it was. Miles's calculation. I would absorb the insult because enforcing the boundary might hurt my own money. The exact same assumption that had kept the proxy in place for years. What else did he say? Celeste looked uncomfortable. That Owen would still inherit through Northstar. And? That eventually this would stop feeling personal. I laughed once. Convenient. Nathan. He told you to redirect your estate because my son had enough through me, while assuming I would keep supporting your company because my money was already tied to it. He did not say it like that. He didn't need to. Celeste went quiet. Then Theo's assistant knocked again. Another document had arrived from Celeste's estate counsel. A planning appendix. Apparently her lawyer had decided full transparency was now safer than partial disclosure. Theo opened it. One paragraph had been highlighted. Mr. Corbin expressed the view that Northstar's economic concentration in Meridian makes withdrawal of support unlikely regardless of personal disagreement between Mr. and Ms. Vale. Below it, Ms. Vale agreed that Nathan would not act against the family's financial interest. I read the sentence. Then looked at my wife. She had not merely assumed I would stay supportive. She had discussed the assumption with Miles while redesigning our son's inheritance. Celeste whispered. That doesn't mean I thought you had no choice. No? No. What did you think? That you would do what was financially rational. For whom? She opened her mouth. Then stopped. That was when her phone rang. Meridian's board chair. She answered. I could hear only fragments. Yes, I know about the proxy. No, Northstar hasn't opposed Halcyon. I understand. Her face changed. What special meeting? She listened. Then looked directly at me. When? Another pause. All right. She ended the call. Theo asked. What happened? Celeste's voice was almost flat. Meridian's board is meeting this afternoon. About Halcyon? And the proxy. I knew what that meant. The board was no longer treating my family's support as Celeste's personal asset. For the first time since Meridian became a public company, she would have to explain to her own directors why the largest strategic shareholder had taken its voting rights back. And worse, why her secretary had apparently been advising her that my family's fortune was too entangled with hers for me to ever seriously say no. Meridian Crest's board meeting started at 3 o'clock that afternoon. At 2:41, Celeste's general counsel asked whether Northstar would send a representative. I declined. Then Theodore reminded me that Northstar owned 27% of Meridian Crest. This is not a marital argument anymore, he said. I know. Then the shareholder should be represented. So Northstar sent Evelyn Shaw, one of our 2 independent fiduciaries. Not me. That distinction mattered. If I walked into Meridian headquarters the same week I discovered Celeste's will, every question about governance would become a question about whether an angry husband was retaliating. Evelyn had no marriage to defend. No son in the will. No history with Miles Corbin. She had one job. Protect Northstar's interests. I stayed at Theo's office and waited. At 3:18, Evelyn texted. Board has asked for proxy history and Halcyon support records. At 3:42, Miles is in the room. That surprised me. Why is he there? I asked Theo. He's Celeste's executive secretary. He has no board role. Apparently they want him to answer questions about communications. That made more sense. At 4:07, Evelyn called. Her voice was calm. Too calm. We have a problem. What kind? Miles represented Northstar's position to Halcyon's financing team. I stood. How? Email. Did he use Northstar letterhead? No. Did he claim authority? Not directly. That wording worried me. What exactly did he say? Evelyn read from the message. It had been sent 6 weeks earlier to Meridian's acquisition banker and copied to a Halcyon financing advisor. Nathan may complain about structure, but Northstar will not oppose a transaction that increases the value of its Meridian position. Celeste has historically controlled the Vale vote and there is no practical scenario in which the family turns against her on a flagship acquisition. Proceed on that assumption. I closed my eyes. Celeste copied? No. Did she know? Unknown. Then keep that separate. I already said the same thing in the room. Good. That was why Evelyn represented us. I asked. Was the banker relying on it? Partly. How much? Not as a binding commitment. But they included stable shareholder support in the risk narrative. Theo muttered something under his breath. I asked Evelyn. Does the board have evidence Miles spoke for Celeste? Some. What kind? Messages saying, CEO office is comfortable and Celeste considers Veil support locked. Did Celeste actually say that? We're finding out. Then Evelyn said. There's more. Of course there was. Miles had prepared an internal memo titled, Post-Halcyon Capital Alignment. I nearly laughed at the name. People had extraordinary assumptions behind boring titles. The memo described how Meridian could reduce dependence on Northstar over 5 years. That by itself was reasonable. A public company should not depend permanently on one strategic shareholder. But Miles's proposal did not stop there. Step 1. Complete Halcyon while the Veil proxy remained with Celeste. Step 2. Refinance 2 Meridian credit facilities after closing. Step 3. Repurchase part of Northstar's Meridian position using a negotiated secondary transaction. Step 4. Reduce Northstar below 15% voting influence. Step 5. Restructure board nomination rights. I asked. Was this a proved strategy? No. Did the board know? No. Celeste? Still unclear. The last page contained a comment from Miles. Once Northstar is economically diversified away from Meridian, Nathan's ability to turn personal conflict into corporate leverage disappears. I stared out Theo's window. Miles kept returning to the same idea. My independence was a problem to solve. My family's voting rights. Owen's inheritance. My ability to disagree with Celeste. Each became leverage in his language. Not because I had threatened anyone. Because the option existed. What does Evelyn recommend? Theo asked. I put the phone on speaker. Evelyn answered. Immediate preservation of Miles's devices and suspension of his strategic access. Can Northstar demand that? No. Meridian's board decides. What are they doing? Discussing it now. I heard a door close on her end. Then her voice lowered. Nathan, Celeste looks blindsided by the buyback plan. That mattered. Looks? I cannot know what she knew. Right. But when the memo went on screen, she asked where it came from. What did Miles say? That it was scenario planning. Did she authorize scenario planning around reducing Northstar? He says yes. And Celeste? She says she authorized work on shareholder concentration risk, not a plan to weaken your family after Halcyon. That sounded plausible. Meridian's board would have legitimate reasons to model shareholder concentration. Miles could have turned that instruction into something more personal. Again, responsibilities had to stay separate. I asked. What about his statement that Veil support was locked? That's where Celeste has a problem. How? Evelyn read another email. Celeste to Miles, 2 months earlier. Nathan won't love the leverage profile, but he won't destabilize Meridian. He never has. Keep Northstar in the base case as supportive. I sat back. There it was. Not an authorization to speak for Northstar. Not approval of Miles's full plan. Still an assumption she had consciously made. She expected my loyalty to cover risk she had not actually secured. Theo shook his head. She treated a revocable proxy like permanent alignment. Yes. And marriage like a voting agreement. Yes. At 5:12, Meridian's board suspended Miles from all acquisition, financing, shareholder relations, and strategic planning matters pending forensic review. He kept his employment for the moment. His calendar duties moved to another executive office. His devices were preserved. His building access restricted. Celeste remained CEO. But the board removed her unilateral authority to communicate Northstar's position in lender materials. Any statement concerning Northstar support now required written confirmation from Northstar itself. That should have existed from the beginning. At 5:40, Celeste called me. I answered. They suspended Miles. I heard. You sent Evelyn. Northstar sent an independent fiduciary. You could have come. That would have made everything worse. She knew I was right. That irritated her. He says you're using the will to take control. I'm not. He says Northstar will vote against Halcyon. Northstar has not voted. Will you? I'm abstaining from the committee recommendation because of the marriage. Silence. You're abstaining? Yes. Then who decides? The other 4 governance members. Her voice changed. For the first time, I think she realized she could not negotiate with me privately and make the issue disappear. If they oppose it, then Northstar votes accordingly. You could influence them. Of course I could. And? I gave them the same materials Meridian gave lenders. That's it? That's it. She was quiet. Then. I did tell Miles you wouldn't destabilize Meridian. I saw. I believed it. I know. Was I wrong? That depends what you mean by destabilize. You wouldn't intentionally damage a company where your family has billions invested. No. Relief entered her voice. Then I added. But refusing to support a transaction is not sabotage. The relief vanished. Nathan. Northstar is allowed to decide a $2.1 billion acquisition is bad. You never questioned Halcyon before. Because you controlled the proxy. You trusted me. Yes. And now you don't. No. She breathed out slowly. At least say the real thing. That is the real thing. No. You don't trust me because of the will. Partly. And Miles. Partly. And Sophie. No. That stopped her. Sophie has done nothing. Celeste became quiet. I know. Do not make this about children competing. I'm not trying to. Then stop saying her name like she caused this. She started crying. I love her. I know. I love Owen too. Then you need to explain your estate decision to him someday. Her voice cracked. Not now. No. He's 10. I agree. Then why does it feel like everyone is already judging me as his mother? Because you changed his place in your estate dramatically. He'll still be richer than almost anyone alive. That is not how children measure whether their mother chose them. Silence. Then she whispered. I didn't think of it as choosing. That may be the problem. We did not speak for several seconds. Then I asked. Did you authorize Miles to develop a plan to reduce Northstar below 15%? No. Did you authorize him to speak to lenders as though Northstar support was guaranteed? No. Did you tell him I would never destabilize Meridian? Yes. Did you tell him to assume Northstar was supportive? Yes. Then you created the opening. She did not argue. No, she said quietly. I did. That was the first clean admission. I continued. Did you tell him our marriage made Northstar safe? Yes. Why? Because for 12 years it was. That wasn't because marriage transferred ownership. I know. It was because I trusted you. I know. And you treated trust as something permanent enough to build lender assumptions on. Yes. She started crying harder. I know. Then she asked. Can we meet tonight? For what? Us. That is exactly what we shouldn't do while this is unfolding. You're still my husband. For now. That landed. Nathan. I've retained divorce counsel. She stopped breathing for a moment. What? I met with Laura Chen this afternoon. Because of the will? No. Then why? Because the will showed me how far apart our definitions of family have become. You're divorcing me because I wanted to help Sophie? No. My voice hardened for the first time. Stop making me say that. She went silent. I am not divorcing you because you gave another child money. Then why? Because you made a life-changing decision about our son with Miles in the room and me outside it. She cried quietly. Because you let your secretary advise you about how much Owen needed from you based on what he would inherit from me. Another breath. Because you built Meridian financing assumptions around my family's loyalty without asking whether that loyalty still existed. And because every time you knew I might object, you arranged the structure before telling me. The line stayed silent. Then Celeste whispered. I was afraid you'd say no. Yes. That doesn't mean I wanted to control you. It means you kept designing situations where my no would arrive too late. That was the truth. The will was valid before I knew. The Halcyon financing narrative was circulating before Northstar reviewed it. Miles's planning assumed Vale support before anyone asked Vale. She had not stolen anything. She had done something more subtle. She had treated consent as a timing problem. That evening, Northstar's governance committee met. I attended only for factual questions, then recused myself before deliberation. The other four reviewed Halcyon. Meridian's projections were strong. The target had stable cash flow. The acquisition price was aggressive but not absurd. The financing structure, however, depended on leverage levels two committee members considered too high. At 9:20, they voted. 3-1. Northstar would not oppose Halcyon outright. But it would not provide advance support either. It would abstain unless Meridian reduced leverage and removed a proposed related party financing provision. That was not a declaration of war. It was worse for Celeste in a different way. It was ordinary shareholder scrutiny. At 9:36, Evelyn sent Meridian the decision. At 9:48, the lead bank requested revised leverage assumptions. At 10:05, Halcyon's board asked whether Meridian's financing commitment remained fully underwritten. At 10:22, Meridian's CFO called an emergency modeling session. No collapse. No bankruptcy. No magical destruction. Just the first time Celeste had to negotiate a major deal without my family's automatic yes. Then, at 11:03, Theo called. We found another document. I closed my eyes. What now? Miles prepared a draft guardianship memo. I stood. For Sophie? No. His voice changed. For Owen. The draft was not signed. Not legally effective. But Miles had proposed that if Celeste and I died in close succession, Sophie and Owen should be raised within a unified family structure where practical. Suggested guardian. Miles Corbin. I felt the room disappear around me. Did Celeste approve it? No. Did she see it? We don't know yet. Then find out before anyone says another word. Theo paused. There's a comment in the margin. Whose? Celeste's initials. My hand tightened around the phone. What does it say? Theo read it slowly. Need to discuss with Nathan later. He will resist Miles. Do not include in final draft yet. I closed my eyes. Not approved. Not rejected. Deferred until later. Again. My wife had not just allowed Miles into the conversation about her fortune. She had allowed him into a draft conversation about who might raise our son after we were dead. And once again, she already knew the one person missing from the discussion would say no. The guardianship memo was not a will. It was not signed. It had never been sent to a court, filed with a lawyer, or incorporated into Celeste's estate documents. That distinction mattered. I repeated it to myself twice before I called Theodore back. What exactly am I looking at? A planning draft from Celeste's estate file. Prepared by Miles? Apparently drafted from notes after a planning session. By her estate lawyer? No. Metadata shows Miles created the first version and sent it to Celeste. That was worse. What did Celeste do with it? Added comments. Then forwarded it to her estate counsel with the note, background only. Do not implement. I exhaled. Good. Theo paused. Partly. What else? The lawyer replied that guardianship nominations should be discussed jointly with you because your current documents nominate your sister, Rachel Vale, as Owen's guardian. She still is. Yes. And Celeste? Her old will nominates Rachel too. Old will? The newly executed will still references the existing guardianship memorandum because guardianship wasn't changed in the signed documents. I sat down. So legally, if we both die, Rachel remains the nominated guardian. Yes. Then Miles has no legal role. Correct. That should have ended it. It didn't. Because the question was no longer whether Miles could take Owen. He couldn't. The question was why my wife had entertained a document putting her secretary's name next to our son's future without telling me. Send me the full email chain. Theo did. Miles's original message was dated 4 months earlier. Celeste, since you're restructuring Sophie's side, we should think through the worst-case family scenario too. If something happened to both you and Nathan while Owen is still young, Rachel would almost certainly isolate him inside the Vale family. That could effectively erase Sophie from his life. Then, if the goal is for the children to remain family to each other, one option is a unified guardianship structure. I'd be willing to take responsibility for both if necessary. Obviously Nathan may resist because of the Vale dynamics, so this would need careful sequencing. Careful sequencing. I hated that phrase instantly. It meant the same thing every other Miles document meant. Do not ask while the answer can still stop you. Celeste replied 90 minutes later. I understand the concern. Rachel would protect Owen fiercely, but yes, she'd default to Vale family structures. I don't know how she'd treat Sophie. Miles. Exactly. If Sophie is central to your estate plan but Owen is raised somewhere that views her as an outsider, your intent falls apart emotionally even if the trust survives legally. Then Celeste. Need to discuss with Nathan later. He will resist Miles. Do not include in final draft yet. That was the margin comment Theo had read. But there was another email below it. Miles wrote. If you raise it too early, he'll shut it down because he'll see me, not the structure. Better to finish the economic pieces first so the emotional conversation isn't controlling the planning process. Celeste responded. Agreed on waiting. Not agreed on outcome. That mattered. She had not chosen Miles as Owen's guardian. But she had agreed that I should be brought into the conversation only after other planning was already settled. Again. I called Rachel. She answered on the second ring. You sound terrible. Good morning to you too. What happened? Do you still want to be Owen's guardian if something happens to me? Silence. Then. Yes. Even if Celeste and I divorce? Yes. Even if it creates complications with her estate? Nathan, what the hell happened? I told her only the necessary part. Celeste's new estate planning. Sophie. Miles's draft. Rachel swore so loudly I moved the phone away. Then she stopped herself. Is this legal? Nothing changed legally. Did Celeste sign it? No. Then why are you calling me like somebody kidnapped Owen? Because emotionally, that was how the document felt. I knew better than to say it that way. Because I wanted to confirm your position. It hasn't changed. Would you keep Owen in contact with Sophie? Rachel went quiet. That depends. On what? Whether he wanted contact. Whether it was healthy. Whether Miles was using Sophie as a route into his life. That was exactly what Celeste had apparently feared. Not cruelty. Boundaries. Rachel continued. I wouldn't punish a child for what her father did. I know. But I also wouldn't pretend she became Owen's sister because Celeste decided they should inherit like one. She cares about Sophie. She's allowed to. I know. But caring about Sophie doesn't let her redesign Owen's family after you die. Exactly. I thanked Rachel and hung up. At noon, Celeste asked to meet. This time, I agreed. Not at home. Not at Meridian. We met in a conference room at Theo's office with both attorneys present. Celeste arrived without Miles. Her own estate lawyer, Amanda Price, came with her. Amanda looked exhausted. That made two of us. I put the guardianship memo on the table. Did you ever intend to make Miles Owen's guardian? No. Immediate. Firm. Did you consider it? Yes. That hurt more because she did not try to soften it. Why? Celeste folded her hands. Because I was trying to think through what would happen to Sophie if I died. That explains Sophie. I know. Explain Owen. She looked down. I started thinking of them together. They aren't siblings. No. They aren't step-siblings. No. You and Miles aren't married. No. So why were you treating them like a family unit? Her voice became quieter. Because I had started imagining a future where they might be. There it was. Amanda shifted beside her. My lawyer, Laura Chen, wrote something down. I asked. With Miles? Yes. While we were still married? Yes. Did he know you imagined that? Yes. Did Owen? No. Did I? No. I leaned back. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then Celeste said. I had not decided to leave you. You had decided enough to restructure your will. Yes. You had decided enough to imagine Miles raising our son. I considered a scenario. Stop. She froze. Don't turn this into vocabulary. Her eyes filled. You're right. I pointed at the page. This says I would resist. Yes. You knew that before asking me. Yes. So why wait? Because I thought you'd reject anything involving Miles before hearing the reasoning. That's called an answer. Celeste looked at me. What? My rejection would have been an answer. She swallowed. I know. No, I don't think you did. I kept my voice level. You treated my no like a distortion you needed to route around. I thought you were emotional about him. I was. You hated him. I distrusted him. And now? Now I know I was right to. She flinched. Amanda interrupted gently. For clarity, there was never a legal change to Owen's guardianship nomination. I understand. And Celeste specifically instructed me not to implement Miles's draft. I understand that too. Celeste looked toward me. I wasn't trying to take Owen away from your family. Then why did Miles think Rachel protecting him was a problem? He thought she would exclude Sophie. And you? I thought she might. Did you ask Rachel? No. Did you ask me? No. Did you ask Owen whether Sophie felt like family to him? He's 10. Exactly. I leaned forward. You were building a future around what Miles wanted Sophie to mean to our son. Celeste started crying. That's fair. It was the first time she said those words without defending herself afterward. Then I asked the question I had been avoiding. Were you planning to leave me for Miles? She closed her eyes. Yes. Amanda looked toward her, but Celeste continued. I had not picked a date. How long? About 6 months. My stomach went cold. 6 months. Before the will revision. Before the halcyon financing assumptions. Before Miles's guardianship draft. Everything suddenly aligned. You were planning a replacement family. No. The denial came quickly. Then she stopped herself. I told myself I wasn't. What did you call it? A possible future. With my son in it. Yes. With Sophie. Yes. With Miles. Yes. And where was I? She said nothing. That was answer enough. Laura asked. Did Ms. Vale ever discuss post-divorce custody with Mr. Corbin? Celeste's face changed. Yes. I felt my hand tighten around the edge of the table. What did he say? He said 50-50 custody might be disruptive if Owen stayed primarily in Vale family environments. I stared at her. What does that mean? He thought Owen might resent Sophie if he moved between two very different households. And his solution? Celeste looked ashamed. That Owen spent most school nights with me. There it was. Not a legal filing. Not a custody petition. But a private plan. What did you say? That you would never agree. What did Miles say? That courts care about stability. I laughed once. My attorney did not. Did you agree with him? I considered it. Based on what concern about my parenting? None. School attendance? No. Safety? No. Neglect? No. Then why should our son live primarily with you? Celeste whispered. Because I thought it would make the transition easier. For whom? She closed her eyes. There was no good answer. Not Owen. Not me. For her. For Miles. For the new household she had begun imagining before telling the old one it was over. Amanda placed a hand near Celeste's file. Celeste, you should be careful. No. Celeste wiped her face. He deserves the full answer. Then she looked at me. I was trying to design the divorce before I had the courage to ask for one. That sentence explained almost everything. The will. The guardianship memo. The assumptions about North Star. The halcyon support. Even Sophie's new position in Celeste's estate. She was trying to pre-build the next life while keeping the current one functioning long enough to finance it. I said. You don't get to design my side of a divorce. I know. You don't get to decide Owen's custody because your future relationship works better that way. I know. And Miles does not get to plan around Rachel, North Star, or my son. I know. This time I believed she understood the sentence. Maybe too late. Still. Then Theodore entered. He had stayed out of the personal discussion, but now he carried a new document. Sorry to interrupt. I looked at him. What? Meridian's forensic team sent North Star a preservation notice. Celeste immediately straightened. For what? Miles's communications with private wealth advisors. Her face changed. I didn't authorize that. Theo sat. What advisors? 2 multifamily offices and 1 trust company. I asked. What was he discussing? Theo looked at Celeste first. Then at me. Post-divorce asset coordination. Celeste stared. What? The first email was from Miles to a wealth advisor in New York. Assuming Celeste restructures her estate towards Sophie and Nathan retains Vale assets for Owen, we may eventually have 2 family capital pools that need coordinated management if Celeste and I formalize our household. Our household. Not hypothetical enough anymore. The next paragraph. Celeste is likely to retain significant Meridian holdings personally. Nathan's family may become less cooperative after separation, so we should model how to reduce dependence on Vale-controlled capital over 3 to 5 years. Then, longer term, if Owen resides primarily with Celeste during school years, there may be opportunities to coordinate education, real estate, travel, and family office services across both children without formally commingling trusts. Celeste stood. I never approved this. Theo nodded. We don't currently have evidence you did. Then why did he write it? Nobody answered. I knew. Because Miles was no longer merely advising Celeste about her future. He was modeling himself inside it. Her fortune. His daughter. My son. My family's capital. Our divorce. Even Owen's custody schedule. all treated as variables in a structure where Miles eventually sat near the center. Celeste looked sick. I told him I might leave Nathan. That was enough, I said. She looked at me. No. Yes. I didn't tell him to plan this. I believe you. That stopped her. You do? Yes. Then why do you look at me like that? Because he could only build this plan because you gave him access to decisions that never belonged in his hands. Her face collapsed. That was the difference. Miles had crossed lines of his own. But Celeste had opened doors. The meeting ended shortly afterward. Meridian's board suspended Miles completely that evening. Not just strategic duties. All employment responsibilities. His company devices were seized. His access badge deactivated. His communications preserved. The board hired outside forensic counsel. Celeste remained CEO. For now. But another control disappeared. She could no longer make unilateral personnel or financing decisions involving Miles, Halcyon, or Northstar. At 7:30, Northstar's committee met again. Halcyon's leverage had been revised downward after our objections. The related party financing provision had been removed. The economics now looked stronger. Northstar voted 3-1 to support the acquisition. I abstained again. That mattered. We were not trying to kill Celeste's deal. We were evaluating it. When the structure improved, the answer changed. Meridian announced revised financing the next morning. Banks remained committed. Halcyon accepted the changes. The acquisition survived. Celeste called me. Northstar supported it. Yes. After everything? The revised deal is better. She was silent. You really weren't trying to destroy Meridian. No. Miles said. Stop telling me what Miles said. She went quiet. Then. You're right. I continued. You keep using him as the person who explains me to you. I know. He was wrong. Yes. And you kept preferring his version because it required less from you. Her voice broke. Yes. The divorce petition was filed that afternoon. Not sealed. Not dramatic. Just paperwork. Celeste was served through counsel. No confrontation. No scene. Then Theo called me one final time before dinner. Forensics found a personal spreadsheet on Miles's laptop. What now? It tracks projected wealth. His. Everyone's. Celeste. Sophie. Owen. Me. Northstar. Meridian. Columns for current value, expected inheritance, post-divorce control, and projected household influence. One line beside Owen's name read. Vale wealth protected through father. Minimal need for Celeste allocation. Beside Sophie. Primary beneficiary, Celeste estate. Beside Miles. Indirect influence through Sophie plus household management. And beside me. Reduced relevance after divorce if Meridian dependence on Northstar eliminated. I stared at those words. Reduced relevance. Miles had turned my family into a spreadsheet. My son into an inheritance assumption. My wife into a capital pool. His daughter into a bridge. And himself into the person standing between all of them. I asked Theo one question. Did Celeste ever see this? No evidence so far. Good. Good? Yes. Because I wanted the line to stay clean. Celeste had betrayed our marriage. She had let Miles into decisions involving Owen that should never have included him. She had treated my family's money as permanent background support. Those were hers. But Miles's private plan to organize all of us around his future influence? That belonged to him. And for the first time since I discovered the will, I realized Celeste and I might soon be fighting different battles. I was trying to protect my son from decisions his mother had already made. Celeste was about to discover that the secretary she trusted enough to help plan her next family had been planning to manage her too. Miles Corbin's spreadsheet did not prove he had stolen anything. That distinction mattered. He had not transferred Celeste's shares. He had not forged my signature. He had not changed Owen's trust. He had not made himself beneficiary of Celeste's estate. What he had done was map the future as though everyone around him were assets whose behavior could be predicted, influenced, and eventually organized around his interests. And the more Meridian's forensic team looked, the clearer that became. At 8:30 the next morning, Meridian's board met without Miles. I attended only through Evelyn Shaw as Northstar's representative. Celeste was there. So was Meridian's general counsel, Priya Desai, and outside forensic attorney Marcus Feld. Feld began with the spreadsheet. He was careful. This document reflects Mr. Corbin's private planning. We currently have no evidence Ms. Vale directed him to create it. Celeste looked toward the board. I did not. Feld nodded. We have found no instruction from you. Good. Then he changed slides. But Mr. Corbin's planning relied heavily on access obtained through your office. That was where Celeste's responsibility returned. Miles had access to internal capitalization tables, North Star voting information, executive compensation structures, Meridian acquisition models, calendar details for Celeste's estate planning meetings, private notes regarding her anticipated divorce, and even high-level information about Owen's expected trust structure. None of those items were individually extraordinary for a senior executive secretary. Together, they created an almost complete map of our lives. Charles Donnelly, Meridian's board chair, asked, "Why did an executive secretary have access to North Star succession assumptions?" Celeste answered, "Because he coordinated some family office meetings." Why? I used him to manage scheduling between Meridian and personal matters. Did North Star authorize that access? No. Did Nathan? No. Charles looked toward Priya. Was there a policy preventing it? Not specifically. Then we need one. That was the institutional failure. Nobody had asked whether Miles should have access because Celeste trusted him. Her trust became the policy. Feld opened the next document. A note Miles wrote to himself after one estate planning meeting. Key problem: Nathan believes family capital equals family sovereignty. Celeste still thinks emotionally in terms of partnership. Need her to understand that after divorce, whoever controls operational coordination controls reality. Celeste stared at the screen. What does that even mean? Feld answered. We believe he was referring to practical access rather than legal ownership. He opened another note. Do not challenge Vale ownership directly. Build parallel dependence away from it. Once Meridian financing is independent and Sophie's trust is established, Nathan loses veto relevance. Again. My ability to say no was described as a defect in the system. Then another line. Celeste will resist framing this as control. Present as continuity planning. That one changed her face. He was managing me. Nobody answered immediately. Feld finally said. It appears he was tailoring recommendations to how he believed you would respond. Celeste laughed once. It was bitter. He knew I'd reject the word control. Yes. So he called it continuity. Yes. I thought about how often she had used that word with me. Continuity of family. Continuity of Meridian support. Continuity for Sophie. Continuity for Owen. Miles had found language that turned Celeste's fear of losing people into a reason to give him more access. Charles asked. Did Mr. Corbin have any formal financial interest in Sophie's trust? No, Feld said. Future inheritance? No. Control rights? Only the proposed family distribution advisor role, which was not economic ownership. Then what was his upside? Feld opened an email. Miles had contacted a private wealth management firm about something called a family administrative company. The structure itself was legal. High-net-worth families sometimes created entities that employed staff, handled travel, property management, bill payment, tax coordination, and administrative services across trusts and family members. Miles proposed one for Celeste's future household. His draft name. Crest Corbin Family Services LLC. Celeste had never approved it. But Miles's model assumed the company would receive annual management fees from Celeste personally and administrative service fees from entities associated with Sophie. Projected annual compensation to Miles. $1.8 million. Plus housing, travel, staff, and a discretionary performance bonus. Charles looked at Celeste. Were you aware of this? No. Did you ever discuss employing him after leaving Meridian? Celeste hesitated. Yes. In what role? Managing personal investments and family administration. Compensation? Never discussed. Equity? No. Control over Sophie's trust? No. Feld nodded. Again, clean lines. Celeste had imagined Miles in her personal future. Miles had privately designed that future into a profession paying him millions. Not the same thing. But close enough to make her understand how thoroughly he had monetized access. Then Feld showed the most damaging document yet. An email to a wealth advisor. Once Celeste separates from Nathan, she will be emotionally vulnerable and highly resistant to anyone telling her the transition was a mistake. That creates a strong window to formalize structures before she reconsiders. Celeste stood so fast her chair rolled backward. What? Charles said her name. She ignored him. Read that again. Feld did. The sentence did not improve. Then the next one. Do not push marriage immediately. She associates legal commitment with loss of autonomy right now. Household integration first. Financial infrastructure second. Formal relationship later. Celeste's face drained of color. For months, she had believed Miles understood her better than I did. Apparently he did. Just not for the reason she wanted. He understood which fears created openings. He knew she hated feeling controlled. So he planned to avoid asking for control until structures were already built around him. Exactly what she had done to me. That irony was brutal. Celeste sat slowly. I told him I was afraid Nathan would try to control the divorce. Feld nodded. We found that message. Did he believe I was afraid of marriage itself? I can't speak to his belief. She looked at me through the screen. I gave her nothing. This was not the moment to rescue her from what she was seeing. Charles asked. Is any of this criminal? Feld answered carefully. Not by itself. Fraud? Not established. Misappropriation? No evidence yet. Then what are we investigating? Undisclosed conflicts, misuse of confidential information, representations made outside his authority, possible breaches of company policy, and whether he used Meridian resources for personal planning. That was realistic. Miles might be manipulative. Manipulation alone was not necessarily a crime. The board's job was not to punish bad personality. It was to determine whether he abused his employment. That answer came quickly. Miles had used a Meridian-paid research vendor to model family office structures. He had instructed an analyst to gather data on Northstar Holdings under the label Strategic Shareholder Research. He used Meridian's executive travel service to schedule 2 meetings with private wealth advisors without disclosing they concerned his own expected future role. And he had asked Meridian finance staff to estimate the tax consequences of reducing Northstar's voting position while presenting the request as halcyon planning. Those were company resources. Used partly for his private strategy. The board terminated him for cause that afternoon. No criminal referral yet. Instead, Meridian preserved records and notified outside counsel to determine whether reimbursement or civil claims were warranted. His access ended at 2:17. His company laptop was already in forensic custody. His office was sealed. His email redirected to legal. Celeste remained seated after the vote. Then Charles turned to her. Now we address your conduct. She nodded. The board separated it into 3 categories. First, matters she did not know. Miles's private spreadsheet. The planned family administrative company. His personal compensation projections. His plan to reduce my relevance. His analysis of her emotional vulnerability. Those were his. Second, matters she knew and approved. Using Miles in personal estate planning discussions. Discussing a future relationship with him while still married to me. Allowing him access to information involving Owen and Northstar. Assuming Northstar support for Halcyon without written confirmation. Permitting him to coordinate too many personal and corporate functions through the CEO office. Those were hers. Third, unresolved governance questions. Whether Celeste could remain an effective CEO after allowing her secretary to become so embedded in decisions involving the company's largest strategic shareholder. Charles asked. Do you dispute that framing? Celeste looked exhausted. No. Do you believe Mr. Corbin manipulated you? Yes. Does that excuse your decisions? She closed her eyes. No. That answer mattered. The board did not remove her as CEO that day. Instead, they imposed temporary controls. All family office matters had to stay outside Meridian systems. Celeste could not use Meridian staff for personal estate or divorce coordination. Communications involving Northstar required general counsel review. Any future strategic transaction involving Northstar required independent board oversight. And the audit committee would complete a 30-day leadership review. Celeste hated it. I could see that. But she voted in favor. Afterward, she called me. Not immediately. 3 hours later. I answered. He was planning me. That was her first sentence. Yes. I thought we were planning together. No. She cried quietly. I feel stupid. That's probably not useful. What is? Figuring out which decisions were still yours. She went silent. Then. The will was mine. Yes. Putting Sophie first was mine. Yes. Letting Miles into the planning meeting was mine. Yes. Talking to him about custody was mine. Yes. Treating your family's money as guaranteed support was mine. Yes. She breathed shakily. But the spreadsheet wasn't. No. The family company wasn't. No. The plan to make himself necessary wasn't. No. I heard her exhale. Not relief. Clarity. I keep wanting to hand you the whole thing and say he did this to us. He didn't. I know. He accelerated it. Yes. He encouraged your worst assumptions. Yes. But he could only work with what you gave him. She started crying harder. I know. Then she asked. Did you ever think I would leave you for him? Yes. How long? Months. Why didn't you say more? I did. You said you didn't trust him. And you told me I was insecure. I know. You said he was just efficient. I know. You said Sophie needed support. I know. I did not need to punish her with every old sentence. She remembered them. Then she said, I want to change the will. I closed my eyes. Don't do it because of this. What? Do not rewrite Owen back in because Miles betrayed you. Nathan. Your estate decision should survive your emotions. That was the same standard I wanted for myself. If you believe Sophie should inherit most of your fortune, leave it. Silence. You're serious? Yes. You hate the will. I hate what it says about how you were thinking about Owen. That sounds like the same thing. It isn't. I continued. Your money is still yours. She cried softly. What if I was wrong? Then change it because you're wrong. Not because you suddenly hate Miles. That stopped her. Eventually she said. I need time. Yes. For once, time came before the structure. Not after. The next day, Northstar completed its own governance review. The family committee confirmed Celeste's removal from all remaining Vale fiduciary roles. Permanent unless a future committee independently changed it. My estate plan was updated. Rachel remained Owen's nominated guardian. An independent trust company would manage his major financial assets if I died before he reached adulthood. Rachel could oversee personal and educational decisions. No spouse of mine. No future spouse of Celeste. No family secretary. No single person would control everything. Theo looked at the new documents. This is less convenient than the old structure. Good. He smiled. You finally listened to your father. Don't tell him. He'll become unbearable. Theo's smile faded slightly. Your father is dead. I know. The joke had come automatically. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Theo said. He would have liked this structure. Maybe. My father had always believed love and governance should be able to survive each other without becoming the same thing. I learned late. That afternoon, Meridian announced Miles's departure. The statement was short. Meridian Crest Group has terminated the employment of Executive Secretary Miles Corbin following an internal review of unauthorized activities and conflicts of interest. The company has implemented additional controls around executive access and personal business separation. No mention of Sophie. No mention of my marriage. Good. Children did not belong in corporate scandal. But the story leaked anyway. Not the will. Not yet. Only that Celeste's secretary had been terminated while Northstar revoked her proxy and Meridian reviewed governance. The stock fell 5%. Then stabilized. Halcyon financing remained intact. The company would survive. Celeste's personal empire was another question. Because at 6:15 that evening, Amanda Price sent Celeste the executed copy of the will she had signed months earlier. Celeste forwarded one page to me. No message. Just the beneficiary schedule. Owen, $10 million trust. Sophie, residuary estate. I stared at it. Then my phone rang. Celeste. I'm looking at it now, she said. So am I. I remember signing it. Yes. I remember thinking Owen wouldn't need more. Yes. I remember Miles saying Sophie would never have what Owen had. Yes. She started crying. But I can't remember asking what Owen would hear if he ever saw this. That was the question she should have asked from the beginning. Not how much he needed. Not how much he already had. Not whether 10 million was objectively enough. What would her son understand from the choice? I said quietly. He would probably ask why his mother wanted another child to carry most of what she built. Celeste made a broken sound. I don't know how to answer that. Then don't change the will until you do. She stayed silent. A minute passed. Then another. Finally. Nathan? Yes? I thought the Vale fortune meant Owen could never lose. I looked at the new trust documents on Theo's desk. You were measuring the wrong thing. I know. Money had never been the inheritance in question. Belonging was. And Celeste had spent months counting dollars while her son was quietly being moved out of the center of his own mother's future. Now Miles was gone. The proxy was gone. My family fortune was back under my family's control. But the hardest part was still ahead. Because sooner or later, Celeste would have to decide whether changing the document changed the truth behind why she wrote it. Celeste did not change her will for 12 days. That was the smartest thing she had done since this started. Old Celeste would have reacted immediately. Miles betrayed her. Delete Sophie. Northstar took back the proxy. Restore Owen. Board questioned her judgment. Create a new trust before anyone could question it again. This time she waited. She met with Amanda Price without Miles. Then with a child psychologist who specialized in high-net-worth family transitions. Then, apparently, with Owen's school counselor. Not to tell Owen about the will. To understand what children his age actually hear when adults talk about inheritance, fairness, and replacement families. I knew because Amanda called Theodore for limited coordination. No beneficiary details. No pressure. Just a question about whether my estate plan would still protect Owen if Celeste made no changes at all. Theo answered yes. Northstar's structure had already been rebuilt. Owen's future no longer depended on Celeste managing Vale assets. That meant she was finally free to make her own estate decision without pretending my family fortune needed her oversight. It also meant I had nothing left to take back. The phrase appearing in financial media that week was more dramatic. Vale family reclaims control of billion-dollar fortune from CEO wife. Technically, that was wrong. Celeste never owned the Vale fortune. We revoked delegated authority. That was less exciting. It was also the truth. Meridian's board completed its 30-day leadership review before Celeste touched her estate documents. Charles Donnelly called me after the vote because Northstar remained the company's largest strategic shareholder. Celeste stays CEO. That surprised me. Unanimous? 6-2. Conditions? A lot. He listed them. A new chief of staff selected by the board's governance committee. No executive assistant could hold strategic authority without a written mandate. Personal estate, family, and divorce matters prohibited on Meridian systems. All related party or major shareholder communications routed through general counsel. No assumption of Northstar support without written confirmation. Annual executive conflict disclosures. Independent review of any transaction involving someone with whom Celeste had a significant personal relationship. And Miles? I asked. Civil claim. For what? Misuse of company resources, confidential information, and unauthorized outside representations. Criminal referral? Counsel did not find enough at this stage. That sounded right. Miles had been manipulative. Possibly disloyal. Definitely self-interested. But wanting a future position around Celeste's money was not automatically fraud. Meridian was suing to recover company expenses and enforce confidentiality. Nothing more unless new evidence emerged. What did the board say about Celeste's judgment? I asked. Charles paused. That trust was damaged, but not beyond repair. Meaning? She disclosed the full estate planning overlap herself after Miles was fired. That helped? A lot. She fought the controls? At first. And? Then she asked us to make some of them permanent. That surprised me more. Which? Independent Northstar communications and personal business separation. I looked out my office window. Northstar's name was on nothing in the room. That was deliberate. For years, Celeste had treated my family capital as part of the invisible architecture around Meridian. Now everyone was being forced to see the boundary. Charles continued. She also asked to reduce the CEO's authority to grant informal strategic access. She asked. Yes. Why? She said, if someone can become as powerful as Miles became because I trust him, then the role is designed badly. That was almost exactly right. Not all failure was character. Some of it was architecture. The board kept her. Not because Miles took all the blame. Because she had finally started fixing the parts that belonged to her. I respected that. I still filed for divorce. Both could be true. 3 days later, Celeste asked to speak to me in person. We met at a neutral family law office. No Miles. No Meridian staff. No Theo. Only our divorce attorneys in adjoining rooms. She brought a new estate summary. I did not reach for it. You changed it? Yes. Because Miles is gone? No. Because the board review ended? No. Then why? She placed the summary on the table. Because I finally answered the question you asked. What would Owen hear? Yes. I waited. Celeste looked exhausted, but not frantic. I kept telling myself inheritance is math. It can be. But children aren't. No. I thought giving Sophie most of my estate was generosity. It was generosity. She nodded. And I thought Owen already having the Vale fortune meant reducing his share from me created fairness. That was your reasoning. Yes. She looked down. But I was comparing balance sheets instead of relationships. I said nothing. She continued. Owen would not see $10 million and say, my mother provided for me adequately. No. He would see Sophie carrying almost everything I built. Yes. And ask why. Yes. Celeste swallowed. I don't have an answer I'm proud of. That was more honest than inventing one. So what did you change? She pushed the document toward me. Owen and Sophie were now equal residual beneficiaries. 50% each. Separate trusts. No shared family administration. No expectation that Vale Wealth should reduce Owen's share. Miles removed as advisor. An independent trust company for Sophie while she was young. Owen's trust controlled independently from Northstar. Specific charitable gifts unchanged. I read it carefully. Why 50-50? Because Sophie matters to me. I know. And Owen is my son. Yes. I don't want helping one child to require symbolically replacing the other. That was the right framing. I tapped the page. Does Sophie know? No. Miles? No. Good. Celeste looked hurt. He is still her father. Yes. He will eventually know if I die. That is different from involving him in the decision now. She nodded. Then. Do you approve? I looked at her. No. Her face changed. Then I added. And that is a good thing. What? You do not need my approval. She stared at me. This is your estate. Yes. Your decision. Yes. You asked me what I thought the old will meant to Owen. I told you. And now? Now you made your own choice. Her eyes filled. For years, Celeste had reacted to disagreement by trying to eliminate it. Now she had finally made a decision without needing me to bless it. That mattered more than whether I would have chosen 50-50 myself. I think it's fair, I said. Relief crossed her face. That's different from approval? Yes. She laughed softly. You are exhausting. So I've heard. Then her expression changed. I want to ask about Northstar. No. She blinked. You don't even know the question. I know enough. I wasn't asking for the proxy back. Good. I was going to ask whether you'll ever trust me around the Vale structures again. I thought about it. Not as a fiduciary. Her face tightened. Ever? I don't know. That sounds like no. It may be. She looked down. I deserve that. This isn't about deserving. What is it about? Design. That surprised her. I continued. The new structure is better without either spouse holding unilateral control over Owen's entire inheritance. She understood the implication. Even if you remarry. Yes. Your future wife won't manage it. No. So you're not just excluding me. No. Something in her relaxed. That mattered too. Northstar was not being rebuilt as a punishment for Celeste. It was being rebuilt because the old assumption was bad. Marriage should not have automatically made either spouse sole steward of intergenerational wealth. That afternoon, our divorce lawyers exchanged preliminary settlement positions. Celeste did not claim Northstar. She could not legally own it anyway. She did not challenge the proxy revocation. She did not ask for economic compensation tied to the voting authority she once held. I did not claim any ownership in Meridian shares that were clearly her separate property. No one tried to trade Owen's inheritance against marital assets. The structure was cleaner than our marriage had become. Then came the house. Not the house we lived in. The Lake Norman property Celeste bought personally 8 years earlier. It was her favorite place. Owen learned to swim there. Sophie had spent weekends there too. Celeste's attorney proposed she keep it. I had no objection. Then she surprised us. I want Nathan to have a permanent access right for Owen until he's 18. My attorney looked at me. I shook my head. No. Celeste frowned. It's for Owen. He can visit with you. What if I sell it? Then it is sold. He loves that house. I know. I thought. Don't build permanent legal ties because you're afraid something meaningful might change. That landed. She leaned back. Old Celeste would have argued. Instead she nodded. You're right. The house stayed hers. No shared access covenant. No emotional real estate embedded inside divorce papers. Clean. The divorce itself became public 2 days later because Meridian had to disclose certain executive proceedings in a routine filing. The company released one sentence. Celeste Vale and Nathan Vale are engaged in an amicable marital dissolution that is not expected to affect company ownership or operations. That was mostly true. Media coverage exploded anyway. The will leaked 3 days after that. Not the new version. The old one. Somebody obtained the estate coordination summary showing Owen receiving $10 million while Sophie received the residue. The headline was brutal. Billionaire CEO cuts own son from fortune for secretary's daughter. Celeste called me at 6:20 that morning. Owen cannot see this. He will. He's 10. He has classmates. I want the school to take his phone. No. Nathan. We can't make the internet disappear. What do we do? That was the first time in years she asked that question without already having an answer. We tell him ourselves. Silence. Together? Yes. We went to his school before lunch. The counselor gave us a private room. Owen came in carrying his backpack. He looked from Celeste to me. Am I in trouble? No, I said. Celeste was already crying. That scared him more than anything. What happened? She took a breath. You may hear something about my will. Owen frowned. What's a will? A document that says what happens to your things when you die. His eyes widened. Are you dying? No. That answer came from both of us at once. Good. Then Celeste did the hardest thing. She told him the truth in language a 10-year-old could understand. I made an old plan where I was going to leave much more money to Sophie than to you. Owen stared at her. Why? Celeste looked at me once. I did not help. This answer belonged to her. Because I thought you would already have enough from Dad's family. Owen's face changed. Not anger first. Confusion. So? Exactly. The same question I had asked. Celeste started crying. So I thought helping Sophie more would make things fair. Did Sophie ask? No. Miles? He talked to me about it. Owen looked down. Then asked. Do you like her more? There it was. The question no estate attorney could model. Celeste moved closer, but did not touch him until he allowed it. No. Then why does she get your stuff? Celeste cried harder. I changed that plan. When? Recently. Because Dad got mad? No. I could have corrected her. I didn't need to. She continued. Dad was angry. But I changed it because he helped me understand something I had not thought about properly. Owen looked at me. Are you getting her money? No. Then what happened? Your mom's estate is still hers. He frowned. Then why was Dad involved? Celeste answered. Because I used what you might inherit from Dad's family as part of my reason. Owen thought about that. Then. That's weird. Despite everything, I almost laughed. Yes, Celeste whispered. It was. He was quiet for a long time. Then asked. What do I get now? Celeste answered. You and Sophie are treated equally in the new plan. Owen considered that. Okay. That's simple. Not forgiveness. Not full understanding. But enough for that moment. Then he asked. Can I go back to class? Celeste looked crushed. I understood. She wanted some dramatic reassurance. A hug. I still love you, Mom. Children do not perform closure on schedule. Yes, I said. Owen stood. At the door, he turned. Mom? Yes? Don't die. Celeste covered her mouth. I won't if I can help it. He nodded and left. She cried for several minutes after the door closed. I stayed. Not as her husband. As Owen's father. That distinction had become easier. By evening, Celeste released a public statement through Meridian. Short. No attack on the leak. No defense of the original math. An outdated estate planning document involving my family was disclosed without authorization. My son's privacy should be respected. I made the earlier decision described in that document, and I take responsibility for the hurt its disclosure may cause. The plan has since been revised for reasons unrelated to public pressure. Then one final line. My son is not responsible for any corporate or family disputes surrounding me. That was enough. No Sophie's name. No Miles. No attempt to win the internet. Meridian stock barely moved. Northstar did nothing. The world did not end. That night, Celeste called. Owen texted me. What did he say? Good night. I smiled. That's good. I almost asked if he forgives me. Don't. I didn't. Progress. Then she asked. Do you think taking back the family fortune changed anything for him? I understood what she meant. No. Her voice went quiet. Then what did it change? It made sure your estate decision could no longer rely on you controlling his other inheritance. She breathed in slowly. So you really didn't take anything from me? No. You took your family back. Yes. That was the truth. Not her money. Not her company. Not even her future. I took back the authority my family had lent her when we still believed marriage made our interests identical. It didn't. Maybe it never should have. And once that authority was gone, Celeste was forced to decide what kind of mother she wanted to be without hiding behind how wealthy Owen would someday become. That decision mattered far more than the $1 billion. The divorce became final 4 months after the old will leaked. By then, the public had mostly moved on. Business media preferred faster scandals. Meridian closed the Halcyon acquisition under the revised leverage structure. Northstar supported the final transaction through its committee vote. Miles Corbin settled Meridian's civil claims without admitting fraud. He repaid company expenses tied to unauthorized personal planning, surrendered certain deferred compensation, and agreed to a 3-year restriction on using Meridian's confidential information in any advisory role. No prison. No dramatic arrest. No secret offshore account. His wrongdoing had been more ordinary than that. He abused access. He blurred authority. He used corporate resources to plan a future role around Celeste's personal wealth. And he repeatedly presented his own interests as if they were simply good planning. That cost him his job, his reputation inside Meridian, and the future he had been quietly designing. Sophie remained in Celeste's will. That mattered to me. I had worried, briefly, that Celeste would punish the child for her father's behavior. She did not. Sophie had not written the spreadsheet. She had not discussed Northstar's voting rights. She had not suggested changing Owen's custody. She was 11. Celeste kept the 50-50 estate structure. 2 separate trusts. Independent administration. No expectation that Owen's Vale inheritance reduced what he received from her. No Miles. No shared family management. Just 2 children Celeste cared about, treated without pretending one had to replace the other. I would not have written the plan exactly that way. It was not my plan. That was the point. Our divorce hearing took 17 minutes. The judge reviewed the settlement. Meridian shares stayed with Celeste except for a limited marital portion of compensation-linked equity already agreed by counsel. Northstar remained entirely outside the marital estate. The Charlotte house was sold. Celeste kept Lake Norman. I retained our mountain property in Blowing Rock. Joint liquid investments were divided. No spousal support. Shared legal custody of Owen. A parenting schedule built around school rather than executive calendars. Then the judge asked whether we both believed the marriage was irretrievably broken. Celeste looked toward me once. Yes. No hesitation. I said the same. The judge signed. That was it. 12 years. Reduced to signatures. Outside the courthouse, Celeste stopped beside the stone railing. You didn't take Meridian. No. I know that sounds obvious now. It should. She smiled faintly. I spent the first month telling myself you were going to use Northstar to take everything I built. You told the board that? Not directly. Miles did. Her expression changed. He did. And you believed him. For a while. Why? Because it was easier than believing you were just leaving. That answer surprised me. She continued. If you wanted Meridian, then the divorce was still a fight. And if I didn't? Then you didn't need me. There it was. The fear underneath all the governance language. Celeste had spent years building a life where dependence felt like proof of love. If my family capital supported Meridian, we were connected. If I let her control the proxy, we were aligned. If Owen needed her estate, he belonged to her future. If I could independently withdraw any of those things, she experienced that independence as a threat. You kept confusing being needed with being loved, I said. She nodded. Yes. And then you made people needing you part of the structure. Yes. She looked down. I did it with Owen too. How? I told myself he didn't need my money. That was true. He didn't need hundreds of millions. No 10-year-old does. But I made doesn't need the money mean won't care what I choose. I said nothing. She continued. That was cruel, even if I didn't mean it that way. It was careless. Cruel sounds more honest. I did not argue. Then she said. I apologized to Sophie too. That surprised me. For what? For putting her in the middle of something she never asked to be part of. What did she say? She asked if Owen was mad at her. My chest tightened. And? I told her no. Good. She cried anyway. Of course she did. Children understand emotional danger even when adults try to hide the accounting. Celeste continued. I told her none of this was her fault and that the trust was not a prize she had taken from Owen. That was important. She asked whether I still loved her. What did you say? Yes. And? That loving her didn't require making Owen feel less loved. That was better. For the first time, Celeste had found a way to hold two relationships without turning them into competing balance sheets. We said goodbye at the courthouse without touching. No hug. No, maybe later. She left in one car. I left in another. The first major test of our new structure came 6 months later. Owen wanted to attend a 2-week robotics camp in California. The program cost almost nothing compared with either of our incomes. The problem was timing. The camp overlapped with a family trip Celeste had already planned to Italy. Old Celeste would have turned it into an authority question. She booked first. Therefore the trip stood. Instead, she called me. What does he want? The camp. More than Italy? Yes. She sighed. I already reserved everything. You can still take Sophie. Silence. Then. That sounds like exactly the old problem. What? You and Owen doing one thing. Sophie and me doing another. That is not a problem unless you make it one. She thought about that. So I don't need to make every event prove we're one family. No. Okay. That was it. Owen went to robotics camp. Celeste took Sophie and her sister to Italy. Nobody died. Nobody became less loved. No trust language needed revision. When Owen returned, he brought Celeste a cheap plastic model of a Mars rover from the camp store. She put it on the shelf behind her desk at Meridian. I saw it during a shareholder meeting months later. She noticed me looking. He spent $12. Generous. He told me it was an investment in my personality. That sounds like him. She smiled. Then the meeting started. North Star and Meridian had become almost painfully formal. That was healthy. Every shareholder support request came in writing. Every governance assumption was documented. North Star reviewed deals like any major institutional shareholder. Sometimes we supported Celeste. Sometimes we did not. 1 year after the divorce, Meridian proposed a $600 million stock repurchase. Celeste wanted North Star to participate proportionally. Our committee declined. Not because of her. Because the price was too low. Celeste called Evelyn Shaw, not me. Negotiated. Improved the offer. North Star sold a small portion. No marital conversation. No accusation that I was using money to punish her. That single transaction convinced me the new structure worked. Then came something I did not expect. Celeste voluntarily began reducing Meridian's dependence on North Star. Not by forcing us out. Not by creating a secret buyback strategy. By broadening the shareholder base through secondary offerings and long-term institutional placements. Over 2 years, North Star's stake fell from 27% to 19%. We sold willingly at fair prices. My family became more diversified. Meridian became less dependent on us. Everyone benefited. One afternoon, Theo looked at the updated holdings report. Your father would approve. Because we sold? Because nobody had to manipulate anyone. That was true. I eventually stepped back from Northstar's day-to-day management too. Not completely. But enough to appoint Evelyn as managing chair. For years, I had criticized Celeste for confusing authority with identity. I did not want to repeat it under a different family name. Owen noticed. Does Aunt Evelyn own Northstar now? No. Then why is she boss? She manages more of it. But it's still ours? Partly. He thought about that. So owning something doesn't mean you have to control everything. I smiled. Correct. Mom learned that too. Kids always found the shortest version. Yes. He was 12 when he finally asked about the will again. We were driving home from soccer. Dad? Yeah. Would Mom really have left almost everything to Sophie? Yes. He stared out the window. Was she going to leave me nothing? No. $10 million. He turned toward me. That's a lot. Yes. Then why was everyone so mad? Good question. Because money wasn't really the issue. What was? What the decision meant. To you? To me. To your mom. Probably to you. He was quiet. Then. I think I would have thought she picked Sophie. There it was. Exactly what Celeste had eventually understood. I think your mom realized that too. That's why she changed it? Yes. Because you made her? No. He looked skeptical. You got mad. I did. You took back the family money. Authority over it. Same thing. Not quite. He rolled his eyes. Rich people are weird. Accurate. He laughed. Then became serious. Do I have to be mad at Mom? No. Do you want me to? Absolutely not. What about Miles? You don't have to feel anything about him. He was weird. That's a reasonable opinion. Owen looked back out the window. Is Sophie still getting half? As far as I know. Okay. No outrage. No demand that he get more. That was the part adults had missed from the beginning. Owen did not care whether Celeste left him $10 million, $300 million, or nothing like an accountant would. He cared whether the decision meant his mother had moved him outside the center of her life. Once he knew she had not, the numbers lost most of their emotional power. Celeste eventually left Meridian too. Not because the board removed her. Not because Northstar forced her. 3 years after the divorce, she announced she would step down as CEO after a 12-month transition. The company was stronger. Halcyon had integrated well. Governance reforms remained. She chose an internal successor. The board approved. When the news broke, I sent one message. Congratulations on choosing the timing yourself. She replied. That may be the nicest governance joke you've ever made. Then. Thank you. No more. At her final shareholder meeting, Owen sat beside me. Celeste gave a short speech. Most of it was about Meridian. Employees. Investors. Mistakes. Growth. Then she said. I spent years believing legacy meant controlling what survives you. I looked toward Owen. He was listening. Celeste continued. I no longer believe that. A pause. Legacy is what survives when you stop controlling it. That line was probably written by a speechwriter. It still sounded true. Afterward, Owen went to her before I did. She hugged him. Then Sophie joined them. For 1 second, I watched all three together. Years earlier, that image would have made me feel replaced. Now it looked simpler. A mother. Her son. A girl she loved. No spreadsheet required. No one needed to lose for someone else to belong. Celeste saw me standing nearby. She approached after the children moved away. Northstar still owns 19%. Yes. You never took Meridian. No. You never wanted to. No. She smiled sadly. I spent months terrified you'd take back your family fortune and use it to crush me. I did take it back. Yes. But? You took back control, not wealth. Exactly. She nodded. And somehow that was enough. It had been. Because the fortune was never the point. Authority was. Once Celeste could no longer treat Vale Capital as permanently hers to direct, she had to confront the truth. Owen's inheritance from my family was not a substitute for being chosen by his mother. Northstar's support was not proof that our marriage was safe. And my willingness to trust her once did not mean she was entitled to that trust forever. She looked across the room toward Owen. He's taller than you. Unnecessary observation. She laughed. Then, do you think he forgave me? That is a question for him. I know. You could ask. I'm afraid of the answer. There was the old Celeste. Then she caught herself. But that doesn't mean I get to avoid asking. Progress. She walked toward Owen. I watched her sit beside him. I could not hear the conversation. I didn't need to. For once, whatever answer came belonged entirely to the two people involved. No secretary. No family office. No trust language. No husband managing the outcome. Just a mother finally asking her son a question before deciding what his answer should be. Celeste asked Owen the question after her final shareholder meeting. Not in front of me. Not in front of Sophie. Not through a lawyer. She took him to lunch 2 days later and asked whether he had forgiven her for changing the will. I knew because Owen told me that evening. He dropped his backpack beside the kitchen table and opened the refrigerator. Mom asked if I forgave her. I looked up from my laptop. What did you say? He took out orange juice. I said I didn't know. That sounded honest. How did she react? She said that was okay. That surprised me. Old Celeste would have turned uncertainty into negotiation. Why not? What do you still need? Tell me what fixes it. This time, apparently, she just accepted the answer. Owen sat across from me. Dad? Yeah? Do you think I should forgive her? No. His eyebrows lifted. No? I think you should decide that yourself. That's annoying. I know. What would you do? I'm not you. Still annoying. I smiled. Then he became serious. I'm not mad about the money. I know. I don't even know what I'd do with $10 million. Hopefully nothing for a while. He ignored that. I was mad because it sounded like she was building a different family. There it was. The real inheritance again. Not dollars. Position. Belonging. She was imagining a different future, I said. With Miles. Yes. With Sophie. Yes. And without you. Yes. Owen stared at the table. Was she going to leave me too? No. How do you know? Because every bad plan we found still had you in her future. That doesn't sound good. It wasn't. He looked confused. She was trying to control where you fit instead of asking what was right. The custody stuff? You know about that? Mom told me some. I made a mental note to talk with Celeste about age-appropriate detail. Then again, Owen was 13 now. He understood more than either of us liked. She said she thought I should live with her most of the time. Yes. But you never did anything bad. No. So that was about Miles. Partly. And her. Mostly. Owen was silent. Then. I think I forgive her. I did not react. He frowned. You don't care? I care. Then why didn't you say anything? Because I don't want you looking at my face to decide whether your answer is allowed. He stared at me. Then laughed. That sounds like something Mom teaches now. Terrifying. He grinned. Then his expression softened. I don't think I trust her the same. That is different from forgiveness. I know. That was more emotional intelligence than I had at 40. He finished his juice. Can I tell her tomorrow? Yes. Do you think she'll cry? Absolutely. Great. He left the room. I sat there for a while after he was gone. Celeste had spent years trying to arrange outcomes before difficult conversations happened. This time, she asked the question first. And Owen gave her an answer she could not manufacture. That was probably the healthiest inheritance either of them would ever receive. A year after Celeste left Meridian, Northstar sold another 4% of its position. No crisis. No hostile campaign. No secret pressure. Meridian had matured beyond needing Vail Capital as emotional insurance. Northstar had matured beyond needing Meridian as proof that my family still mattered inside the company Celeste built. Our stake fell to 15%. Still valuable. No longer defining. Evelyn Shaw recommended the sale based on diversification targets. I supported it. Theo signed off. Celeste was informed through Meridian's investor relations process exactly like any other former executive shareholder. She texted me later. 5 years ago I would have taken this personally. I replied. Progress. She sent. Don't sound so pleased. That was the closest thing we had to friendly banter. The public story gradually became simpler than the truth. People said I took back the Vail fortune. Some claimed I had used Northstar to remove Celeste from Meridian. That never happened. Some claimed Miles had manipulated her into disinheriting Owen. Too simple. He influenced her. The decision was still hers. Some claimed Sophie had stolen Owen's inheritance. Nonsense. Sophie was a child. Some claimed Celeste changed the will because I threatened her financially. Also false. I revoked authority over Vale assets because she had made clear that her personal estate philosophy and our family governance were no longer aligned. She changed her will later because she finally understood what the original choice meant to her son. The facts were less satisfying than revenge. They were also better. Miles eventually resurfaced professionally. Not at Meridian. Not in family wealth. A mid-sized consulting firm hired him in an operations role after his confidentiality restrictions expired. I learned from Theo. You angry? No. Surprised? A little. People rebuild. Yes. The answer came easier than I expected. Miles had lost the future he planned around Celeste. That was consequence enough. I did not need him unemployable forever. Sophie kept growing up too. At 16, she and Owen attended the same summer entrepreneurship program in Boston. Celeste called me beforehand. Is that weird? Yes. Should one of them withdraw? No. You sure? They're teenagers, not merger parties. She laughed. I'm serious. So am I. The program lasted 6 weeks. Owen called twice. Mostly to complain about dorm food. Sophie apparently became team leader in a startup competition and ordered Owen around constantly. When I asked whether that bothered him, he said, "She's good at it." Then, "Don't tell Mom I said that." I didn't. At the end, their team won second place. Celeste and I both attended the presentation. We sat separately. No drama. No strange symbolism. Afterward, Sophie hugged Celeste. Owen hugged me. Then the kids switched. Owen hugged his mother. Sophie shook my hand awkwardly. "Mr. Vale. Nathan is fine." She looked relieved. Then said, "I know some of what happened." I waited. My dad told me. How much? That there was money stuff and he got too involved. That's a short version. She looked embarrassed. I never wanted Owen's inheritance. I know. I didn't even know about it. I know. She looked toward him. He's my friend. That's enough. Her shoulders relaxed. Then she joined Owen near the display tables. Celeste stood beside me. Thank you. For what? Not making her carry Miles. She didn't do anything. I know. You keep thanking me for not punishing children. She gave a sad smile. Maybe because I almost did. That was harsh. Also true. She had not meant to punish Owen. But she had treated his future wealth like proof he could absorb being moved aside. We watched the kids argue over who had forgotten to upload the final pitch deck. Celeste said, "They actually do act like siblings. Do not start." She laughed. I know. I know. That laugh told me the old obsession was finally gone. Relationships could become what they became without being legally engineered first. Years passed. Owen went to college. Not business school. Engineering. He said one family member building empires was enough. Sophie studied public policy. Celeste started a foundation focused on financial literacy and family governance for founders. I teased her once. You found a way to make your mistakes tax deductible. She laughed so hard she had to hang up. Northstar continued under Evelyn. I stayed on the board but stepped away from daily management. That mattered to me. For years, I had defined myself partly by protecting the Vale fortune. Eventually I understood that the best protection was building a structure that did not need me forever. Owen would inherit economic interests. Not an obligation to become me. That was the final lesson Celeste and I accidentally learned together. Children are not succession plans. They are people. One autumn afternoon, years after everything began, Owen came home for Thanksgiving. He was 21. Tall. Calm. Far too expensive sneakers. He found me in the library reviewing Northstar reports. Still working? Unfortunately. He dropped into a chair. Mom showed me the wills. Plural. I looked up. The old one and the current one? Yes. That surprised me. How did that happen? I asked. And? He stared at the fireplace. The old one was weird. Accurate. The new one is fine. Okay. He looked at me. You know I don't care about getting half. I know. I told her if she wants to give more to Sophie, she can. That interested me. What did she say? She said no. Why? She said the equal structure isn't because we need equal money. It's because she wants the document to reflect that neither of us replaces the other. That sounded like Celeste now. Owen smiled. Then I told her she was being sentimental. What did she say? She said I'm becoming you. My condolences. He laughed. Then looked at the North Star reports. Dad, do you ever regret taking back the proxy? No. Even though Meridian survived? Especially because it survived. He frowned. I explained. If Meridian had collapsed without North Star's automatic support, people could argue the old dependency was necessary. But it didn't. No. So separating everything made both stronger. Yes. He thought about that. Mom said something similar. Terrible news. He ignored me. She said the worst thing about losing control of the Vale vote was realizing she never owned it. That was the point. And the best thing? What? She said once she stopped pretending your family fortune was hers to rely on, she finally had to decide what Meridian actually deserved. I nodded. That was right. Owen looked toward the family photographs on the wall. One of Celeste remained there. Not wedding photos. A picture of the three of us when Owen was 5. We were divorced. History did not need deletion. Do you still love Mom? He asked. I thought about it. Yes. His eyebrows rose. Still? Not the way you mean. What way? I care what happens to her. I'm grateful for parts of the life we had. I don't want the marriage back. He nodded. That sounds complicated. It is. Rich people are weird. You've said that before. Still true. He stood and headed toward the kitchen. Before leaving, he stopped. Dad? Yeah. I think the whole inheritance thing was never really about money. I smiled. Finally caught up. He rolled his eyes and disappeared down the hall. Theodore Grant retired the following spring. At his farewell dinner, he handed me a thin folder. What's this? The original North Star proxy. The document I signed 12 years before everything fell apart. Celeste's authority over our Meridian votes. My signature at the bottom. I had forgotten what it looked like. Theo said. You want me to destroy it? No. He raised an eyebrow. Sentimental? Educational. I took it home and placed it in the same archive as the revoked proxy notice and my updated estate documents. Not trophies. Not evidence of victory. Reminders. I had trusted my wife with my family's fortune because I believed love made our interests identical. She later treated that trust as permanent infrastructure. Then she used Owen's expected Vale inheritance to justify moving him out of the center of her own estate. That was the moment everything broke. I did not bankrupt her. I did not seize Meridian. I did not take Sophie's trust. I did not rewrite Celeste's will. I took back one thing. Authority that had always belonged to my family. Once I did, everything else became clearer. Meridian had to earn North Star's support. Celeste had to decide what Owen meant to her without counting my money. Miles lost the ability to position himself between our assets and our family. And Owen finally learned the most important thing. He had never wanted the fortune. He wanted to know he had not been replaced. Money could answer 1,000 questions. That was never one of them. That's all for today. Remember to subscribe and support us.